Okay, guys. All right, so we had a tie here for the last one here. I'll try and do both of them. So this is a Pan American Silver Corp. I've not looked at this before, but apparently it's just silver ETF, and I had to go out to the weekly to get a little perspective here, and I've just kind of wicked off some areas here that seem to be. Well, obviously we've gone well beyond it, but just in terms of where we tend to stay. So you can just look here at the volume profile. Here we have a lot of market acceptance here, buyers, sellers, all good. We get now if we can get beyond this, we get into the nosebleed section down here, but down below or until we get down here, just kind of framing the market as we sit, approximately look Vegas Wave is sitting essentially right in the middle of it. And we do have earnings coming in the first week of November. So we got to be wary of that. I think out here at this level, I think this is perfectly good for getting a set of median lines on this. So we're going to have to go down a bit. Here, I'm going to have to move that. Oh, shit. Here, let's move that off for a second here so I can get this in. Just because we're out on a weekly, no reason not to put a set of median lines on it. Tag these up here. So we got our 80%. Now this went deep, but as I recall, we did the 707 here. Right, kind of an interesting example here. So we break the 65. We front run on the 707. Excuse me. So that contender here. Get down to the daily here. Where we can. Here, I'll just have to redraw these guys. Down to the daily here off of this pivot. Let me pull that off now. So here's earnings coming on the 6th. And I think I was down to a 3 hour here. Looks like you've got all of the ingredients here for an impulse. I think you got to do it this way. Yeah, let's just double check our length here. Yeah, I think you're going to have to do that to get your 5th to complete here, A, B, C, and the 4. 1 wicked off here. So let's see if we go to the 8. Yeah, it's not bad. All right, so an impulse is certainly a candidate here off of our, get that right on there, off of our low. So now just anticipating that we'd get a 50% retracement. Okay, nothing out of the ordinary here, guys. So we can get at a larger degree if we're done. 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll go to green. Get this up. We'll go minuet. Okay, so we got a contender here for the 1, working through the 2, looking for it down here. So now the 50. Right, as you'll recall here, the range that I outlined when we were on the weekly. And I was talking about 50% being right in the middle. Well, here's our 50. Here's our Vegas wave out here. Well, this is an 8 hour out here on the 8 hour. Seems pretty reasonable spot. We've got just kind of looking left, all of this. It's not to the tick, but certainly this has been previously. It's been some support. Then it came this area. I'm kind of fattening it up here. Became some resistance before the last drive down. Now potentially we're back here. You can see it's not the point of control, but we're pretty close out here in terms of where we might anticipate some support. So nothing crazy here. This could come down a little bit lower here in the lead up to the earnings. If you want to get all of the geometry here, we could do this as well. Looking for our 3rd to get up here. So if this is 1, 2, we'll be looking for the 3 up here. 4 and 5. Frame that all up. So you're 3 weeks to earnings, roughly. It seems a little early to be a buyer here. So even again, going down to that, it doesn't quite look like that is clear enough as to whether or not we're done here. So we're coming into a double bottom. Yeah, any help from the oscillator. So clearly this is your 3rd. Now this is there's a. That's going pretty far for a 4. We don't have. Let's see on a 3 if we get a little bit more clarity here. Zoom over here so we can see it a little bit better. Okay, so I'll bring this down just because I want to focus right here. So here's the pivot. So here's the 3, 3, 4. It could be here. It could be the 4 of the 3. All right, so if we're using the oscillator here, so as we go under 0 here, that lines us up for the 4 into the 5. So as we come down, let's just check this retrace here. All right, so here's right. Oh Jesus! Like, yeah. So all right, never fails. All right. Okay, so here's the 50. So this algo already hit target, right? So they tagged it twice. So is that enough? Well, note where we are. We're between the 38 here. I've got swing low to swing high. We're between the 38 and the 50. Looks like you might have run into some of this. Oh, that structure kicking in. But how, you don't really have a clean count here. Maybe you could make this case A, B. Doesn't look like you're done yet. Now, double bottom, this market's talking to you. But so for me, it's just not quite clear enough to be a buyer here. So if it's going to come up here and come down, give me at least a 50 here. I'd prefer it down here, right, since we've got time before we get to earnings. Something like that. Now we could, there's a couple of different ways this could unfold. We could get something, we could end up with an ABC, we could have a flat. It's way too early to make that prediction. So I think you have to stay here since this was a 50 until proven otherwise. It's a little tricky here. So if this is 1, and we could be in the process of getting the 2 that way before we come down 3, 4, 5. Hard to call that. So I think if you're an uber bull here, that's not, maybe at the 50. I wouldn't buy that with an earnings a week away. I'd rather see a little bit of a drift lower if I could. Now, the problem is, if you're dying to get long, well, think of it this way. Okay, let's be realistic here. Look at the difference here is between 15 and 14. This is not a big enough difference. So if you were just anxious to get long here, I suppose you got enough there. It's a little early, but I'd likely think, okay, maybe I put on 30, 40% of whatever I wanted to put on here because of this double bottom here, even though I don't love the count. I've got a lot of ingredients here kind of supporting the idea. Right? We've got market structure. We've got an algo that's just double tagged its target to the tick. If I were going to buy a little bit more as it came down to the 50, stop under the 65. It's such a small difference because if this just kind of goes sideways with earnings around the corner and then you get a positive interpretation from the earnings, you could miss that because you're trying to get on board the 3. So then you're waiting for the 1. You're waiting for this to finish before you're hoping that you've just got the 1 of the 3. So you gotta really like it to want to be a buyer here. But I suppose you could maybe do 30, 40% of what you were looking for now. And if it drifts a little lower going into the earnings, which wouldn't surprise me, if we drift a little lower down towards that 50, then maybe I'd put a little bit more on. So if you put 30, 40% here, put the balance on here, stop under the 65. Seems a reasonable way to trade that. Of course, now we'd have a secondary set of median lines here down here on a 3-hour. Right, so we could get this going at the 50. Well, that would set you up rather nicely for that. Right, and maybe that's the 1 of the 3. It's just you're coming up a little short of what you'd like to see there. So you got to really like this play, to want to put dollars at risk there. But it's not a big drop. The difference between where we are now and this double bottom in the 50. So if you're a bull, go for it. But by all means, get a stop on it. Okay, that was a quick one. All right, I'm sure if I can get one more.